Good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Jason Charity, Chair of today's hearing, and I welcome you to this meeting of the Audit Hearing Subcommittee. This is not a public meeting, however, members of the public are very welcome to attend. Before we begin, a few housekeeping points. We are not expecting a fire drill. If the alarm sounds, please leave by the fire exit at the rear of the chamber and go down the stairs and exit through the ground floor doors. Anyone with mobility issues should wait in the refuge area at the top of the stairs and use the intercom to request assistance. The assembly point is in the public square in front of CAS, just beyond the fountain. This meeting is being audio-visually recorded. By entering the chamber, you consent to being filmed and broadcast on the Council's website and YouTube channel. Anyone wishing to record should do so quietly and focus only on participants. Please set your mobile phones to silent or turn them off. And can I say, when speaking, press the red mic button beneath your microphone and press again when you finish talking. Thank you. We'll now begin the meeting. Item number 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies? It looks like we have a full house, but I'll just confirm. No apologies. Thank you. Item number 2, declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Item number 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of March 2025. We now move to the minutes of the last meeting held in March this year. I'm aware most of today's panel were not present on that occasion, though our independent members, David and Monica, were in attendance. We can therefore rely on their confirmation of the minutes' accuracy. Can the minutes be agreed as a true and accurate record? I'm probably going to look at, thank you. Thank you, David. And do we have Monica second? Yeah, you agree. Thank you so much. All? Thank you, agreed. Item number 4, exclusion of the public and press. It is intended that today's hearing will be held in public. However, towards the end of the proceedings, the subcommittee will need to deliberate in private. Once it has heard all the evidence and representations, at this stage, we will ask all parties to leave the chamber except the independent person, the monitoring officer, and the governance officer. You will be asked to wait in the seated area outside whilst the subcommittee considers the matters in consultation with the independent person. Once our deliberations are complete, all parties will be invited back into the chamber and the outcome will be announced. Item number 5, consideration of the investigating officer's report. Can I first of all just invite those present to introduce themselves? This includes members of the subcommittee, the monitoring officer, the investigator, the independent person, and the governance officer. Maybe just starting with Jane on my right.
Jane Cox, Councillor for Finningley Ward.
Carl Hughes, Councillor for Stainforth and Barmydon Ward.
Francis Jackson, Councillor for Norton and Askham Ward. Monica Clark, I never remembered, independent.
David Hall, independent.
Scott Focus, Service Director, Legal and Democratic Services and the Monitoring Officer.
Phil Beavers, I'm the independent person.
Morning, I'm Neil Concannon, I'm the Head of Litigation and Regulatory at the City Council. I'm the Investigating Officer.
Morning everybody, Jonathan Goodwin from the Council's Governance team and I'm clerking the hearing today.
Thank you. I now confirm that the subcommittee is quorate. Just as a reminder, a minimum of 3 voting members must be present throughout the hearing to form a quorum. I can also confirm that the procedure is to be followed at today's hearing is set out on page 11 of the agenda papers labelled Appendix A. And maybe just pause at this point. Does anyone wish to raise any specific questions on the procedure? No questions? Thank you. As Councillor Broadhurst is not present, may I ask Scott to confirm whether the Council has received any sound or valid reason for his non-attendance and therefore any grounds to adjourn this hearing. Scott.
Unfortunately, we've received no response from Councillor Broadhurst throughout the process or indeed about his attendance today.
Thank you. In that case, the subcommittee will proceed with the hearing in his absence. Now turning to the investigator's findings, can I invite the investigating officer, Neil Concannon, to present his report? This may include any documentary evidence or other materials and, with the subcommittee's permission, the calling of any supporting witnesses. Neil, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This matter relates to two complaints alleging that Hatfield Town and City of Doncaster Councillor Mark Broadhurst has breached the respective council's code of conduct for elected members, and it relates to two Facebook posts. Following an initial consideration of the complaints by the monitoring officer and the independent person, I was asked to investigate the complaints in terms of whether Councillor Broadhurst had in fact breached the code by the following. 1, not treating people with respect. 2, failing to promote equalities and discriminating unlawfully against people of the Muslim faith. 3, bringing his role as a councillor into disrepute. And 4, failing to cooperate with this investigation into the complaints made against him. Councillor Broadhurst has been a Hatfield Town Councillor since 2019 when he was elected to the Dunscroft ward. He was re-elected to office in 2021, representing the Hatfield ward, and again in May 2025. In addition, on the 1st of May 2025, he was elected as a ward councillor for the City of Doncaster Council for the Hatfield ward. Both councils are legally required to adopt a code of conduct to promote and maintain high standards by its elected members. And both councils adopted their current codes of conduct in 2021, and members will be able to see those codes at pages 67 and 79 of your agenda pack. Insofar as is relevant to the matter before you today, they state application of the code of conduct. This code of conduct applies to you as soon as you sign your declaration of acceptance of office of a councillor and continues to apply to you until you cease to be a councillor. This code of conduct applies to you when you're acting in your capacity as a councillor, which may include when your actions would give the impression to a reasonable member of the public with knowledge of all the facts that you are acting as a councillor. The code applies to all forms of communication and interaction, including at face-to-face meetings, in verbal communications and in non-verbal communication. I'll refer to the relevant parts of the codes as we proceed. So now turning to the complaints. Both complaints in this matter relate to the same two offending social media posts in question. Both complainants are members of the public and have asked for their names to be withheld for reasons that are set out in the complaint forms and can be summarised as concerns about their safety and welfare in the event that they were identified. One post is from a Facebook page in the name of Mark Broadhurst, dated the 19th of March 2024, and contains a picture of Adolf Hitler with a caption that reads, and I'll sanitise for the purposes of this hearing, but the full Facebook post can be seen at page 51 of your pack. So for F's sake, if I had chosen Muslims, I would have been an effing legend. The second post is again from the same Mark Broadhurst Facebook page, and this time dated the 30th of March 2024. This is entitled How to Make a Muslim, followed by 4 pictures of an Asian male with the following captions. Step 1, remove brain. Step 2, insert SHIT. Step 3, apply bandage. Step 4, release to the public. And that can be seen at page 53 of your pack. In addition, I've also been provided with a copy of a Facebook post from the same page of Mark Broadhurst, dated the 3rd of May. I should state at this point, I took this to be the 3rd of May 2025, and the reason for that, as the post reads, I would like to thank everyone for who voted for me as a Reform UK ward councillor and parish councillor. Thank you. And the elections in question took place on the 1st of May 2025, and that can be seen at page 55 of your pack. Councillor Broadhurst did not respond to the numerous requests for his comments on these complaints by the monitoring officer, and therefore, regrettably, in carrying out my investigation and drawing my conclusions, I do not know what Councillor Broadhurst's views are on the complaints. I'll return to that point later in my summary. For both complaints, I believe there are two key points to decide. Firstly, was Councillor Broadhurst acting in his capacity as a Hatfield Town Councillor and City of Doncaster Councillor at the operative time? And secondly, did Councillor Broadhurst's conduct amount to a breach of the code? So firstly, was he acting as a councillor at the operative time? Having considered the two offending Facebook posts that have been provided to me as part of these complaints, I note they are originally dated at a time when Councillor Broadhurst was a serving member of Hatfield Town Council. Based on the date of the two complaints that were made, and in the absence of any response to the complaints by Councillor Broadhurst, I believe it's reasonable to conclude that the two offending Facebook posts remained on his Facebook page and viewable by anyone who had access to the page on or after the 1st of May 2025, being the date he was elected as a City of Doncaster councillor. And, I might add, throughout the whole period he was a Hatfield Town councillor. I'm also aware that the two posts have been subject to widespread media attention and online commentary, which would suggest they were also accessible to the public at large via the Facebook page in question. I note the Facebook page in question is in the name of Mark Broadhurst and does not make explicit reference to him being either a councillor of Hatfield Town Council or indeed City of Doncaster Council. However, I also note that in the subsequent Facebook page on the 3rd of May, Councillor Broadhurst thanks everyone who voted for him as a ward councillor and parish councillor. I believe this is significant in two respects. Firstly, it seems to confirm that this Facebook page in question is in fact related to Councillor Mark Broadhurst. Secondly, in publishing this post, based on the evidence available to me, I have concluded he was indicating to anyone who looked at the information he posted on the Facebook page, including the two offending posts, that he was either acting or at the very least, to quote the code, giving the impression to a reasonable member of the public with knowledge of all the facts that he was acting in his capacity as a councillor and therefore subject to the provisions of this code. So secondly, did the content of these social media posts and Councillor Broadhurst's subsequent conduct amount to a breach of the codes? I'll look at each of the relevant provisions of the code in turn. So firstly, as a councillor, 1.1, I treat other councillors and members of the public with respect. The two complainants in question are members of the public, and therefore I have no doubt that they are persons that are owed a duty of respect by councillors under paragraph 1.2 of the code. The Local Government Association produced a model code of conduct in 2020 and issued subsequent guidance on that code in 2021. Both Hatfield Town Council and the City of Doncaster Council adopted or substantially adopted the model code in 2021, and therefore this allows me to draw on the LGA guidance to assist in interpreting the meaning and effect of the codes and when considering the complaints against Councillor Broadhurst. I note that the guidance states as follows: the key roles and responsibilities of councillors representing and serving your communities and taking decisions on their behalf require councillors to interact and communicate effectively with others. In turn, this means that as a councillor, you're required to interact with many different people, often from diverse backgrounds and with different or conflicting needs and points of view. It goes on to say, examples of ways in which you can show respect are being polite and courteous, listening and paying attention to others, having consideration for other people's feelings, following protocols and rules, showing appreciation and thanks, and being kind. In a local government context, this can mean using appropriate language in meetings and written communications, focusing any criticism or challenge on ideas and policies rather than personalities or personal attributes, and recognising the contribution of others to projects. It goes on to explain what disrespectful behaviour is as follows. Failure to treat others with respect will occur when unreasonable or demeaning behaviour is directed by one person or about another. The circumstances in which the behaviour occurs are relevant in assessing whether the behaviour is disrespectful. The circumstances include the place where the behaviour occurs, who observes the behaviour, the character and relationships of the people involved, and the behaviour of anyone who prompts the alleged disrespect. Disrespectful behaviour can take many different forms, ranging from overt acts of abuse and disruptive or bad behaviour to insidious actions such as bullying and demeaning treatment of others. It's subjective and difficult to define. Examples of disrespect in a local government context might include rude or angry outbursts in meetings, use of inappropriate language in meetings, or written communications such as swearing, ignoring someone who is attempting to contribute to a discussion, attempts to shame or humiliate others in public, nitpicking and fault-finding, the use of inappropriate sarcasm in communications, and the sharing of malicious gossip or rumours. Disrespectful behaviour can be harmful to both you and to others. It can lower the public's expectations and confidence in you and your local authority, and councillors and politicians more generally. It influences the willingness of fellow councillors, officers and the public to speak up or interact with you because they expect the encounter will be unpleasant or uncomfortable. Taking into account the content of the two social media posts in question, it seems very clear to me that they focus on personalities or personal attributes, amount to overt acts of abuse and unreasonable and demeaning behaviour, which are an attempt to shame or humiliate others in public, in particular Muslim members of the public, whether living in the ward Council Broadhurst represents or otherwise. Based on the evidence available to me, it seems that they were available to the world at large via his Facebook page. I can very well imagine, for example, a Muslim constituent of Councillor Broadhurst having read or been made aware of the Facebook posts in question, being unwilling to interact with him because, to quote the code, they expect the encounter will be unpleasant or uncomfortable. Therefore, by publishing the two posts in question on his Facebook page, I conclude that Councillor Broadhurst did in fact breach paragraph 1.2 of the code. Importantly, in reaching this conclusion, I've balanced the requirement to treat others with respect against Councillor Broadhurst's right to freedom of expression under Article 10 of the Convention of Human Rights, so the European Convention of Human Rights, namely to hold his views and express them freely. However, I note this is a qualified right that must be balanced against the interests of society. In this regard, I note the LGA guidance on the code states, a balance must be struck between the rights of individuals to express points of view which others may find offensive or insulting, and the rights of others to be protected from hatred and discrimination. It goes on to recognise that freedom of expression is protected more strongly in some contexts than in others, and in particular, a wide degree of tolerance is accorded to political speech, and this is enhanced protection applies to all levels of politics, including local government. Crucially, the guidance qualifies this as follows. However, gratuitous personal comments do not fall within the definition of political expression. Therefore, I've concluded that in making my finding, Councillor Broadhurst's Article 10 rights are not violated. I now move to the next part of the code, which is headed Bullying, Harassment and Discrimination, which reads, as a councillor, 2.3, I promote equalities and do not discriminate unlawfully against any person. The code protects any person from discrimination. Again, this clearly applies to the two complainants as members of the public. Paragraph 2.3 of the code requires councillors to promote equalities and prohibits unlawful discrimination against any person. The guidance states the Equality Act 2010 imposes positive duties on local authorities to promote equality and to eliminate unlawful discrimination and harassment. You must be careful not to act in a way which may amount to any of the prohibited forms of discrimination or to do anything which hinders your authority's fulfilment of its positive duties under the Act. Such conduct may cause your authority to break the law, and you may find yourself subject to a complaint that you have breached this paragraph of the Code of Conduct. Unlawful discrimination is where someone is treated unfairly because of a protected characteristic. Protected characteristics are specific aspects of a person's identity defined by the Equality Act, which include race, religion or belief. Direct discrimination is treating people differently because of their race, religion or belief. Examples of discriminatory behaviour include, but are not limited to, comments, slurs, statements, questions or gestures that are derogatory or offensive to an individual's or group's characteristics, promoting negative stereotypes relating to individuals or group characteristics, racial or ethnic slurs, insults or jokes. An example is given in the guidance, which says the complainant alleged that a councillor liked several racially discriminatory comments on social media and one comment advocating violence against travellers. The panel found that liking of offensive comments did amount to a failure to treat those who were subject of such comments with respect and failure to promote equalities in breach of the Code of Conduct. Looking objectively at the contents of the two offending posts in this case, they do not promote equalities. They do the exact opposite of this. Further, it seems very clear to me that they are comments, racial or ethnic slurs and jokes, albeit in very bad taste, that are derogatory and offensive to an individual or a group's characteristics, which promote negative stereotypes relating to those characteristics. On that basis, on the balance of probabilities, I conclude that the content of the posts amount to discriminatory behaviour against people of the Muslim faith by Councillor Broadhurst, and as such, I have no hesitation in concluding that he breached paragraph 2.3 of the Code. The next part of the Code is headed disrepute. As a councillor, 5.1, I do not bring my role or the council into disrepute. In terms of this part of the Code, the elements of the guidance relevant to this issue state as follows. As a councillor, you are trusted to make decisions on behalf of your community, and your actions and behaviour are subject to greater scrutiny than that of ordinary members of the public. Article 10 of the Convention of Human Rights protects your rights to freedom of expression, and political speech as a councillor is given enhanced protection, but this right is not unrestricted. You should be aware that your actions might have an adverse impact on your role, other councillors and/or your local authority, and may lower the public's confidence in your ability to discharge your functions as a councillor or your local authority's ability to discharge its functions. In general terms, disrepute can be defined as a lack of good reputation or respectability. In the context of the Code of Conduct, a councillor's behaviour in office will bring their role into disrepute if the conduct could reasonably be regarded as reducing the public's confidence in them being able to fulfil their role. The guidance goes on to say what distinguishes disrepute to your role or local authority from disrepute to you as a person. The misconduct will need to be sufficient to damage the reputation of the councillor's role or local authority, as opposed simply to damaging the reputation of the individual concerned. Certain kinds of conduct may damage the reputation of an individual, but will rarely be capable of damaging the reputation of the role of a councillor or the reputation of the authority. Situations that might tip the balance in favour of disrepute to the role of councillor or the authority in particular include where a councillor engages in conduct which directly and significantly undermines the authority's reputation as a good employer or responsible service provider. As I've already noted, the two offending posts have been the subject of widespread media attention and online commentary. They are highly offensive and, in my view, discriminatory, so much so that I believe it's fair to conclude they come within the ambit of disrepute in that they would tend to lead to a lack of good reputation or respectability on the part of Councillor Broadhurst. Councillors are elected to serve all of their constituents in their ward, regardless of their race or religion. They should feel able to approach the councillor if they need assistance. Sadly, given the content of the two offending posts, it's entirely reasonable to infer that a significant number of Councillor Broadhurst's constituents would feel unwilling or unable to approach him if they needed assistance. It seems self-evident to me that the act of publishing the two offending posts will reduce the public's confidence in Councillor Broadhurst being able to fulfil his role as a town or ward councillor. Therefore, on the balance of probabilities, I've concluded that he also breached clause 5.1 of the Code by bringing his role as a councillor into disrepute. Finally, I turn to the part of the Code that is headed Complying with the Code of Conduct, which reads, as a councillor, 8.2, I cooperate with any Code of Conduct investigation and/or determination. Should a formal complaint be made against the councillor relating to an alleged breach of the Code itself requires the councillor in question to cooperate with any related investigation. Relevant parts of the guidance state as follows. The Code of Conduct is a cornerstone of good governance. It's important it's seen to be taken seriously by individual councillors as well as the local authority as a whole. While being subject to a complaint that you have breached the code of conduct and having your conduct investigated may at times be unpleasant and stressful, it is essential that councillors cooperate with any code investigations and determinations. Failure to cooperate will not stop an investigation, but may simply drag matters and does not allow you to put your side of the story, so increases the risk inferences are drawn about your unwillingness to cooperate and that you will be found in breach of the code. The monitoring officer has written to Councillor Broadhurst on a number of occasions regarding the complaints in question and has sought his views in response to the complaints. Specifically, an initial email was sent to Councillor Broadhurst to both his City of Doncaster Council email address dated the 12th of May 2025 regarding the 2 social media posts in question. Further email to him was sent to both his personal and council email addresses dated the 28th of May 2025, together with redacted copies of the 2 complaint forms, copies of the corresponding social media posts, a copy of the Code of Conduct and complaint handling procedure. The email asked Councillor Broadhurst to provide his response to the complaints by the 6th of June 2025. A further email was sent to him to both his personal and council email address on the 4th of June and again on the 10th of June to ask confirm safe receipt of the messages. A letter by post was sent to Councillor Broadhurst's home address dated the 9th of June, again containing the earlier emails, redacted copies of the complaint forms, social media posts and the handling procedure. The letter asked Councillor Broadhurst to respond as a matter of urgency. On the 16th of June 2025, a further letter was hand-delivered to Councillor Broadhurst at the Hatfield Town Council premises. The letter referenced the previous correspondence and again contained the previous enclosures and asked Councillor Broadhurst to respond by 5 p.m. on the 23rd of June. In addition, the monitoring officer attempted to call Councillor Broadhurst on his home phone number on the 3rd, 4th, 8th, 9th, 10th and 12th of June, but there was no answer. On some of those occasions, voicemails were left asking Councillor Broadhurst to contact him, but again there was no response. He also telephoned Councillor Broadhurst's mobile phone but found it to be inoperable. Councillor Broadhurst has not responded to any of the correspondence or voicemails. As such, I believe the only reasonable finding I can make is that Councillor Broadhurst breached 8.2 of the Code of Conduct by failing to cooperate with this investigation. In line with the Council's procedure for dealing with complaints, I submitted my draft investigation report to the 2 complainants and to Councillor Broadhurst on the 14th of July to give them the opportunity to identify any parts that they disagreed with or required further consideration. I asked for a response by the 25th of July. The 2 complainants did not respond to me. Regrettably, also, Councillor Broadhurst did not respond to me. So, having considered the facts as set out in section 3 of this report and the considerations as set out in section 4 and 5, I've concluded that by publishing posts on his Facebook page dated the 19th and 30th of March 2024 respectively, Councillor Broadhurst was 1 in breach of paragraph 1.2 of the code by failing to treat members of the public, in particular Muslim members of the public, with respect. 2, in breach of paragraph 2.3 of the code by failing to promote equalities and discriminating unlawfully against people of the Muslim faith. 3, in breach of paragraph 5.1 of the code by bringing his role as a councillor into disrepute. And finally, 4, in breach of paragraph 8.2 by failing to cooperate with this Code of Conduct investigation into the complaints made against him. I wish to conclude, if I may, with the words of one of the complainants, who says as follows: "This is an outright display of Islamophobia, promoting dangerous stereotypes and hatred to an entire community. Such rhetoric from an elected official is alarming and goes against the principles of equality, inclusivity and respect. It emboldens discrimination, fuels intolerance and diminishes public trust in governance." I believe this succinctly describes the situation, and I could not have summarised the position more clearly myself. Those are my comments, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Neil. We really appreciate your report. Do any members of the subcommittee wish to ask the investigator questions on his reports? And whilst I don't want to constrain questions, I just wonder whether we first tackle Neil's first point about, was Councillor Broadhurst acting in his capacity as a councillor before moving on to questions relating to breach of the code, and then in any other questions that don't fall within those two categories? So, no questions, Neil.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Neil, can I just invite you to sum up the complaint, please, if there's any further comments you wish to make?
Given Councillor Broadhurst isn't here and there aren't any questions, Chair, I don't intend to say anything further. I think I've covered everything.
Thank you. We have now heard from all parties. The subcommittee will now move into private session to deliberate. I will ask all other parties to leave the room. Once we have reached our decision, you will be invited back into the chamber for the subcommittee to present that decision. If you're unable to remain, please let us know now. Thank you. We'll adjourn. Welcome back, everyone. I appreciate your patience whilst the subcommittee deliberated. I will now read out the decision of the subcommittee. Having regard to the report and findings of the investigation conducted by Neil Concannon, Head of Litigation and Regulatory and Deputy Monitoring Officer, City of Doncaster Council, Investigating Officer, the subcommittee accepts the investigating officer's findings that there had been a failure by Councillor Broadhurst to comply with paragraphs 1.2, 2.3, 5.1 and 8.2 of the Code of Conduct adopted by both City of Doncaster Council and Hatfield Town Council in respect of the allegations heard today for the reasons identified in the investigating officer's report. This subcommittee unanimously condemns the actions of Councillor Broadhurst. The comments made by Councillor Broadhurst were clearly racist, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic and highly offensive. As elected councillors, our role is to serve all of the residents in our wards, regardless of their political beliefs, creed or ethnicity, and this is a role which we are proud to uphold as elected members. The actions of Councillor Broadhurst, including his contempt for the investigation process, risk damaging the reputation of this council and all elected members. In our view, Councillor Broadhurst should have apologised for any offence caused by his appalling social media post and publicly committed to working on behalf of all residents. He chose not to do this. Furthermore, Councillor Broadhurst has failed to cooperate with this investigation or today's hearing, and that cannot go unsanctioned. It is our view that he is not fit to hold the role of Deputy Mayor of Hatfield Town Council, nor hold a position on that council's personnel committee, and we recommend to Hatfield Town Council that he be removed from both roles. I will now read out the sanctions. The subcommittee has resolved that in the circumstances of this case, appropriate sanctions to be imposed upon Councillor Broadhurst are as follows. Sanction 1, that Councillor Broadhurst be censured and reprimanded for his actions. Sanction 2, that the subcommittee's findings in respect of Councillor Broadhurst's conduct be published on the City of Doncaster's council website, and to recommend to Hatfield Town Council that the subcommittee's findings be published on its website. Sanction number 3, that the subcommittee's findings be reported to the next meeting of the City of Doncaster's Council for information. Sanction number 4, to recommend to City of Doncaster Council that Councillor Broadhurst not be appointed to any committee position or membership of any outside bodies role for the remainder of his current electoral term. Sanction number 5, that the subcommittee's findings be reported to Hatfield Town Council for consideration. Sanction number 6, to recommend that Hatfield Town Council remove Councillor Broadhurst from his position as Deputy Mayor. Sanction number 7, to recommend that Hatfield Town Council remove Councillor Broadhurst from its Personnel Committee. And finally, sanction number 8, to recommend to Hatfield Town Council that Councillor Broadhurst undertake training at the expense of Hatfield Town Council on equalities, and upon completion of this, be reported back to CDC's monitoring officer. Formal notification of today's decision, including the reasons, will be sent to all parties within 7 working days. I'd really like to thank everyone for their attendance and contribution at today's meeting, and I now declare the hearing closed. Thank you.